Jake Morrison walked into the big meeting room in Washington, where all the important people sat around a huge table. The room was dark except for the blue light coming from a hologram in the center. The alien standing there was tall and looked like it was made of glass. Its voice echoed as it spoke to the humans gathered around the table. The creature called itself Ambassador Kelthon from the Galactic Federation, and it had come to deliver a message that was supposed to scare Earth into giving up. Jake watched the alien's face as it talked about how humans were nothing but insects compared to the great powers of the galaxy. The Federation controlled thousands of worlds and had weapons that could destroy entire star systems. Lisa Kane sat across from Jake, and she was trying not to laugh. She had been waiting for this day for 30 years. As head of Earth's defense forces, she knew things that even some people in this room did not know. When the alien finished talking about how Earth had 30 days to surrender all technology and become slaves, Lisa just smiled and said the Federation was very kind to give them so much time. The alien looked confused by her reaction. It had expected the humans to fall to their knees and beg for mercy. Instead, these people looked calm and almost happy. Jake noticed that Dr. Alex Rodriguez was quietly typing something into a small device under the table. Alex worked with the secret science programs that most governments did not even know existed. The message Alex was sending would reach places far beyond Earth's moon, to installations hidden in dead solar systems, where humans had been working for 200 years. The message was simple, but it would start the biggest surprise in galactic history. Operation Sunrise was about to begin, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. When first contact happened 2 centuries ago, the aliens had looked at Earth and seen a world full of primitive creatures who barely knew how to leave their own planet. They saw humans fighting each other over resources and land. They saw pollution and waste and decided that humans were not worth their attention. The Federation made contact just long enough to tell Earth that they were being watched and would be contacted again when humans became more civilized. What the aliens missed was that humans were very good at learning from their mistakes. More importantly, humans were excellent at holding grudges and preparing for trouble. The moment the Federation ships left Earth's orbit, every major government on the planet started secret programs. They told their people that the aliens were friendly and that contact would happen again someday. Behind closed doors, they prepared for war. General Susan Blake had been a young officer when the aliens first came. Now she was in charge of the largest secret military project in human history. While the Federation watched Earth through long-range sensors and saw normal human development, Susan was building fleets of ships in hidden bases scattered across dozens of star systems that the Federation considered worthless. The aliens thought they understood humans because they had studied Earth's public information networks. They read human history and saw constant warfare between nations and tribes. They assumed this meant humans were good at fighting each other but would be helpless against an organized galactic force. They were right about one thing. Humans were very good at fighting, but they were wrong about everything else. Captain Ryan Hughes commanded one of the deep space monitoring stations that had been watching Federation fleet movements for decades. His base was hidden inside an asteroid that looked like any other chunk of space rock. Ryan and thousands of others like him had been tracking every Federation ship, mapping their patrol routes and studying their tactics. When Alex's message reached Ryan's station, he activated systems that would reveal just how much humans actually knew about their galactic neighbors. Dr. Elena Martinez had spent her entire career studying alien biology from the tissue, samples and data that human agents had been secretly collecting for generations. While the Federation thought humans knew nothing about other species, Elena had detailed information about the biology, psychology, and weaknesses of every major alien race in the galaxy. She had been developing weapons and countermeasures that were specifically designed to work against each type of alien physiology. The Federation's biggest mistake was assuming that humans would react to their declaration like every other species they had conquered. Other races typically responded with either immediate surrender or desperate disorganized resistance that was quickly crushed. The Federation expected humans to panic, to argue among themselves, and to waste their 30 days trying to build weapons that could not possibly threaten galactic technology. Instead, Jake watched as the humans in the room began implementing plans that had been in development for 2 centuries. Colonel Nathan Ford activated communication links to the Titan protocol facilities. massive industrial complexes built inside hollowed moons and asteroids throughout human space. These facilities had been producing ships, weapons, and equipment using resources from star systems that the Federation had written off as depleted or worthless. The alien ambassador was still talking about the Federation's mercy and how humans should be grateful for the opportunity to serve their galactic betters. What Ambassador Kelthon did not know was that there were human agents on Federation worlds who had been working there for decades. These agents looked like the local alien species thanks to advanced genetic modification and plastic surgery. They had jobs in Federation military facilities, government offices, and research centers. Lisa Kane stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the city. She could see normal people going about their daily lives, unaware that their world had just been threatened with destruction. These people trusted their leaders to protect them, and Lisa intended to keep that trust. The Federation thought they were declaring war on a primitive planet, but they were actually challenging a species that had been preparing for this exact moment since their first contact. When the meeting ended, and the alien ambassador returned to its ship, Jake and the others stayed behind to coordinate the next phase of their response. They had 30 days according to the Federation's ultimatum, but Jake knew the real action would start much sooner. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who smiles when you threaten them. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the command bridge of the Earth defense ship Liberty, as space around her began to change in ways that should have been impossible. The Liberty was just one of over 300 ships that suddenly appeared throughout the solar system as their cloaking systems shut down. For 200 years, these ships had been hiding in plain sight, disguised as asteroids, space debris, and maintenance satellites. The Federation scout ships that had been lazily monitoring Earth's space activity suddenly found themselves surrounded by vessels displaying energy, signatures they had never encountered before. The scouts had been watching what they thought was humanity's entire space fleet, a collection of mining ships, research vessels, and primitive defense platforms that posed no threat to anyone. Now their sensors were screaming warnings about massive warships that seemed to have appeared from nowhere. Captain Ryan Hughes received status reports from monitoring stations throughout human space that the Federation had never detected. These bases had been built inside asteroids, on the dark sides of moons, and in the hearts of nebulas where sensor interference made detection nearly impossible. Each station had been watching Federation ship movements, recording their communications and mapping their supply lines. Ryan's own base had been operating for 60 years without the aliens suspecting anything. The Federation had made their intelligence assessments based on what they could observe from their distant monitoring posts. They saw Earth's public space program, the civilian research stations, and the commercial mining operations. They counted Earth's visible military assets and concluded that humanity possessed no real space combat capability. What they missed was that humans had learned to hide their true capabilities behind layers of misdirection and deception. Dr. Elena Martinez activated her research facility's secure communication systems and began transmitting classified data to military commanders throughout human space. For decades, she had been studying alien biology using samples and information gathered by human intelligence operatives working within Federation space. While the Federation believed humans knew nothing about other species beyond basic diplomatic contact, Elena possessed detailed knowledge of the physical and psychological weaknesses of every major alien race in the galaxy. The Federation's assessment of human technology was based on outdated information and false assumptions. They had observed Earth during humanity's early industrial period and assumed that human development would follow the same patterns as other species. Most alien races reached technological plateaus where advancement slowed to a crawl. The Federation expected humans to follow this same pattern and never suspected that human innovation had actually accelerated after first contact. Colonel Nathan Ford initiated the Titan protocol from his command center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. Across human space, massive industrial facilities that had been disguised as natural formations began revealing themselves. Entire moons that appeared to be lifeless rocks opened up to reveal shipyards and manufacturing complexes that had been producing advanced technology for generations. These facilities had been built using resources from star systems that the Federation considered worthless and had written off their exploration charts. The scale of human preparation became clear as reports flowed in from across the solar system and beyond. What the Federation had identified as humanity's total space presence represented less than 10% of actual human assets. The remaining 90% had been hidden using advanced stealth technology, camouflage systems, and careful placement in locations where Federation sensors could not detect them. Commander Nicole Brown coordinated defensive preparations from the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, which served as the hidden nerve center for Earth's real military command structure. The facility that the Federation knew about in Geneva was primarily a diplomatic and public relations operation. The real decisions about human defense had always been made from secure locations that alien intelligence had never discovered. The Federation scout ships began transmitting emergency reports back to their commanders as they realized the scope of their intelligence failure. What they had thought was a primitive planet with limited space capability was actually the center of a vast network of hidden installations, advanced technology and military assets that rivaled anything in Federation space. The human ships that were revealing themselves displayed technology that seemed impossible based on Federation assessments of human capability. Dr. Alex Rodriguez began implementing the research protocols that would demonstrate humanity's true scientific achievements. While the Federation had been dismissing human technology as primitive, human scientists had been developing innovations that surpassed Federation standards in multiple areas. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armored than anything the Federation had seen. Human weapons systems used principles that Federation scientists had not yet discovered. The revelation extended beyond technology to human biology and psychology. The Federation had studied humans from a distance and concluded that they were a typical carbon-based species with standard physical limitations. What they missed was that humans had been enhancing themselves through genetic modification, cybernetic implants, and biological adaptation programs. The humans who would be fighting this war were not the same species that the Federation had first encountered 2 centuries earlier. Admiral Blake watched as Federation scout ships attempted to flee the solar system to report their discoveries. Most of them found their escape routes blocked by human vessels that had been waiting in the outer system for exactly this moment. The few Federation ships that managed to escape would carry news of humanity's capabilities back to their commanders, but the information would arrive too late to change the outcome of the war. The hidden human colonies throughout Federation space began revealing themselves as well. What the Federation had thought were primitive trading posts and research stations were actually advanced military bases staffed by humans who had been living among alien populations for decades. These installations gave humanity strategic positions throughout Federation, territory that would prove crucial in the coming conflict. The Federation's 30-day ultimatum had been intended to give humans time to panic and surrender. Instead, it had given humanity time to complete their final preparations and coordinate the largest military operation in galactic history. The Federation had declared war expecting to face a primitive species with limited resources and technology. They were about to discover that they had challenged the most dangerous and well-prepared enemy in the galaxy. Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos led the first wave of human ships into Federation space with the confidence of someone who had been training for this exact mission her entire life. Her fleet of 60 ships moved through hyperspace using navigation routes that human intelligence had been mapping for decades. The Federation expected desperate attacks against their border stations, but Maria's target was much deeper in their territory. The humans struck at 3 Federation military bases simultaneously. Catching the alien defenders completely off guard, Maria's ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation and began their attack before the Federation forces could even activate their defensive systems. What shocked the alien commanders was not just the surprise of the attack, but the precision and coordination of the human assault. Federation military doctrine was based on centuries of fighting other alien species who followed predictable patterns. Most species relied on overwhelming firepower or superior defensive technology. Some species used swarm tactics with large numbers of small ships. Others preferred massive battleships that could destroy enemies from long range. The humans did none of these things. Captain Peter Williams commanded the strike force attacking the Rigel Defense Station, one of the Federation's most important military installations. His ships moved through the asteroid field surrounding the station, like they had been practicing in that exact location for years. The Federation defenders found themselves unable to predict human movements or counter-human tactics because nothing in their military experience had prepared them for this type of warfare. The humans fought like no species the Federation had ever encountered. Human ships operated effectively in radiation fields that should have disabled their electronics. Human crews continued fighting in atmospheric conditions that should have been lethal. Human tactics seemed to anticipate Federation responses before the alien. Commanders had even decided what to do. What the Federation did not realize was that humans had been studying Federation military tactics for 200 years. Every major battle the Federation had fought had been observed and analyzed by human intelligence. Every Federation training exercise had been monitored from hidden observation posts. Human military planners knew Federation tactics better than most Federation officers did. Commander Nicole Brown coordinated the defense of the human outer colonies as Federation forces launched their counterattack. The aliens expected to find lightly defended settlements that would be easy targets for their superior technology. Instead, they encountered defensive installations that had been specifically designed to counter Federation weapons and tactics. The human colonies were not the primitive outposts that Federation intelligence believed them to be. Each settlement was actually a heavily fortified military base disguised as a civilian installation. The colonists themselves were trained soldiers who had been preparing for this war since childhood. When Federation ships arrived expecting to find helpless civilians, they found themselves facing experienced warriors fighting on prepared ground. Dr. Elena Martinez deployed the biological warfare systems that she had been developing specifically for each Federation species. The weapons were not designed to kill, but to disable and incapacitate alien forces without causing permanent damage. While the Federation used brutal weapons intended to cause maximum casualties, humans used precise biological agents that targeted specific physiological weaknesses of each alien race. The Zephyrian forces found themselves affected by airborne compounds that interfered with their crystalline nervous systems. The Drakmari discovered that their enhanced strength became a liability when human weapons caused their muscles to work against their own skeleton structure. The Velkari's advanced sensory systems became overwhelming liabilities when exposed to human sensory disruptors. General Kevin Thompson revealed the true scope of human intelligence operations as Federation commanders realized that their communications had been compromised for decades. Human agents working within Federation military installations began sabotaging critical systems and providing real-time intelligence to human forces. The Federation found themselves fighting an enemy that seemed to know their plans before they made them. The Federation's numerical advantage became meaningless when human ships proved capable of engaging multiple enemies simultaneously. Captain Andrew Davis led a squadron of 12 human ships against a Federation force of over 100 vessels, and not only survived the encounter, but achieved tactical victory. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armed than Federation intelligence had believed possible. Admiral Christopher Lee coordinated the liberation of the Proxima system, where the Federation had enslaved the native population for over 50 years. The human fleet arrived not as conquerors but as liberators, offering the enslaved species weapons and training to fight for their own freedom. This strategy created chaos throughout Federation territory as oppressed populations began to revolt. The Federation had built their empire on the assumption that superior technology and overwhelming force would always triumph over primitive resistance. They had never faced an enemy that combined advanced technology with superior tactics and detailed intelligence about Federation capabilities. Human forces consistently achieved tactical victories despite being outnumbered because they fought smarter rather than harder. The revelation of human capabilities spread panic throughout Federation space as their forces encountered enemies that defied all expectations. Human soldiers operated effectively in environments that should have been instantly fatal. Human ships performed maneuvers that should have been physically impossible. Human weapons penetrated Federation defenses that had never been breached before. The war that the Federation had expected to end within days stretched into weeks as human forces demonstrated that they had been preparing for this conflict far longer and more thoroughly than anyone had imagined. Every Federation assumption about human capabilities proved to be wrong. Every Federation tactical doctrine proved to be inadequate against human innovation. Captain Ryan Hughes led the assault on the Federation intelligence headquarters at Alpha Centauri, where the aliens kept their most sensitive information about conquered species. The facility was supposed to be impregnable, protected by the most advanced defensive systems in Federation space. Human forces breached the defenses in less than 6 hours using techniques that Federation engineers had not believed possible. The captured intelligence revealed the true scope of Federation oppression throughout the galaxy and provided human forces with detailed information about every Federation military installation, supply depot, and command center. More importantly, it revealed the locations of species that were being held in slavery and concentration camps throughout Federation space. The first phase of the war ended with human forces controlling key strategic positions throughout Federation territory, while Federation forces found themselves unable to mount effective counterattacks against an enemy that seemed to know their every move before they made it. The Federation had declared war expecting to crush a primitive species, but instead found themselves fighting for their survival against the most dangerous enemy they had ever encountered. General Kevin Thompson stood in the command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains as reports flowed in from across the galaxy, showing that the Federation was beginning to understand the true scope of their miscalculation. What had started as a police action against a primitive planet had become a full-scale war against an enemy that seemed to have been preparing for this conflict longer than some Federation species had been. Spacefaring, the revelation of human intelligence, operations shocked Federation commanders as they discovered that their most secure facilities had been infiltrated by human agents for decades. Captain Lisa Park had been working as a logistics coordinator on the Federation military base at Vega for 15 years. Her genetic modifications and surgical alterations made her indistinguishable from the native Velkari species, and her position gave her access to shipping schedules, supply manifests, and troop movement orders. Dr. Rachel Morgan activated the biological warfare protocols that demonstrated just how thoroughly humans had studied their enemies. While the Federation had developed generic weapons designed to work against any carbon-based species, humans had created targeted biological agents specifically designed for each alien race they might encounter. The weapons were precisely calibrated to disable rather than kill, but their effectiveness was devastating to Federation military operations. The Zephyrian Third Fleet found their crews incapacitated by airborne agents that interfered with their crystalline neural networks. The compounds caused temporary paralysis and sensory disruption that left the aliens helpless but unharmed. The Drekmari Second Army discovered that their enhanced physical strength became a liability when exposed to human muscle relaxants that caused their powerful bodies to work against themselves. Commander Nicole Brown coordinated the defense of the liberated worlds as Federation forces attempted to retake the systems that human forces had freed from alien occupation. The Federation expected to find the usual pattern of resistance that they had encountered throughout their history of conquest. Most species fought desperately when their worlds were first invaded, but gradually accepted Federation rule once they realized the futility of continued resistance. Instead, the Federation encountered something unprecedented in their experience. The species that humans had liberated did not simply defend their worlds, they actively joined the human war effort. The Andorians provided their advanced sensor technology. The Rigelians offered their expertise in quantum mechanics. The Centaurians contributed their knowledge of Federation military psychology. Admiral Christopher Lee revealed another layer of human preparation as he coordinated joint operations between human forces and their alien allies. The humans had not simply been studying Federation military capabilities. They had also been learning about the species that the Federation had conquered. Human agents had been working with resistance movements throughout Federation space, providing weapons, training, and coordination. The Federation's greatest strategic advantage had always been their ability to prevent their subject species from uniting against them. Federation policy deliberately kept conquered worlds isolated from each other and dependent on Federation technology and resources. No species had ever successfully coordinated resistance across multiple star systems because the Federation's intelligence services had always been able to identify and crush any attempts at large-scale organization. Captain Andrew Davis led the Liberation fleet that freed the Tau Ceti system after 50 years of Federation occupation. The battle itself was impressive enough, with 12 human ships defeating a Federation garrison force 3 times their size. But what shocked Federation observers was what happened after the battle. Instead of claiming the system for themselves, the humans immediately turned control back to the native population and offered to help them rebuild their civilization. This strategy created chaos throughout Federation space as word spread that humans were not conquerors but liberators. Resistance movements that had been dormant for decades began to activate. Species that had accepted Federation rule began to question why they needed alien overlords. Entire worlds started declaring independence and requesting human assistance in defending themselves. Dr. Elena Martinez coordinated the medical relief efforts that followed human military victories. While Federation conquest typically involved the systematic destruction of native infrastructure and the enslavement of local populations, human liberation involved immediate humanitarian aid and assistance in rebuilding. Federation propaganda had always claimed that alien species needed Federation guidance to survive, but humans demonstrated that these species could govern themselves effectively when given the opportunity. The Federation's military doctrine began to crumble as their forces encountered tactics and strategies that had never been used against them before. Human commanders like General Susan Blake coordinated complex multi-system operations that required precise timing and coordination across vast distances. Federation forces found themselves responding to human attacks only to discover that the real assault was happening somewhere completely different. Colonel Nathan Ford activated the deep space facilities that had been hidden throughout Federation territory for over a century. These installations had been disguised as natural phenomena, abandoned mining operations or scientific research stations. When activated, they revealed themselves to be advanced military bases capable of supporting large-scale operations far from Earth. The Federation realized that their intelligence failure went far beyond simple military preparation. Humans had not just been building weapons and training soldiers, they had been studying Federation psychology, society, and politics. Human propaganda broadcasts began appearing on Federation worlds, speaking directly to oppressed populations in their own languages and addressing their specific grievances against Federation rule. Captain Ryan Hughes led the assault on the Federation's primary intelligence facility in the Sirius system, where the aliens kept detailed records of every species they had conquered and every resistance movement they had crushed. The information captured from this facility provided humans with a complete understanding of Federation methods and gave them the intelligence needed to coordinate resistance movements across the entire galaxy. Where that had been expected to demonstrate Federation superiority instead revealed the fundamental weaknesses of their entire system. The Federation had built their empire on fear and intimidation, but humans had shown that determined resistance could succeed. Federation military units began to experience desertion and defection as individual aliens began to question whether they wanted to fight for a system that oppressed billions of beings. Admiral Susan Blake coordinated the final phase of the campaign as human forces and their alien allies prepared for the assault on the Federation's core worlds. The aliens who had started this war by threatening to destroy humanity now found themselves fighting for their own survival against an enemy that had turned their greatest strength, their diversity, into their greatest weakness. The Federation's leadership began to realize that they were not just losing a war, they were witnessing the collapse of their entire civilization. The species that they had dismissed as primitive and insignificant had managed to unite the galaxy against them. The war that was supposed to have ended with Earth's surrender was instead ending with the Federation's complete defeat. President Michelle Carter walked up the steps of the newly constructed Galactic Peace Council building in Geneva, looking out at representatives from over 400 worlds who had gathered to witness the signing of the new Galactic Charter. The building itself was a symbol of the change that had swept across the galaxy, designed to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different species while representing no single world's architectural traditions. The war that the Federation had expected to end in days had lasted 3 years and had fundamentally changed the balance of power throughout the galaxy. What had begun as an attempt to subjugate humanity had become a galactic revolution that freed billions of beings from Federation oppression. The species that had been dismissed as primitive had become the catalyst for the greatest transformation in galactic history. General Robert Taylor oversaw the peaceful integration of former Federation worlds into the new Galactic Commonwealth, a voluntary alliance based on cooperation rather than domination. Unlike the Federation's system of centralized control and resource extraction, the Commonwealth allowed each member world to maintain their sovereignty while participating in shared defense and economic cooperation. The process of integration had been surprisingly smooth, considering the scope of the changes involved. The species that had lived under Federation rule for generations had not forgotten how to govern themselves. They had simply been prevented from doing so. When given the opportunity to rebuild their civilizations, most worlds had quickly established stable governments and had eagerly joined the Commonwealth. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as Supreme Commander of Commonwealth Defense Forces, coordinated the massive logistical operation required to maintain peace across hundreds of star systems. The Commonwealth military was fundamentally different from the Federation's conquest forces, focusing on defense and peacekeeping rather than expansion and subjugation. The human approach to galactic leadership had surprised many species who had expected the victors of the war to simply replace the Federation as the galaxy's new overlords. Instead, humans had insisted on creating a democratic system where each world had an equal voice in galactic affairs. The Commonwealth Council included representatives from every member world, regardless of their size, population, or technological development. Dr. Elena Martinez led the medical relief efforts that had helped former Federation worlds recover from centuries of oppression and exploitation. The Federation had systematically strip-mined entire star systems and had left many worlds environmentally devastated. The Commonwealth's first priority had been to provide humanitarian aid and environmental restoration to the worlds that needed it most. The economic transformation had been as dramatic as the political changes. The Federation's economy had been based on the extraction of resources from conquered worlds for the benefit of the core Federation species. The Commonwealth's economy was based on voluntary trade and mutual cooperation, allowing each world to develop their natural advantages while sharing in the benefits of galactic commerce. Admiral Susan Blake commanded the Commonwealth fleet from the bridge of the CNS Unity, a ship that had been designed and built by engineers from 12 different species working together. The vessel represented everything that the Commonwealth stood for, combining the best technologies and ideas from across the galaxy into something greater than any single species could have created alone. The transformation extended beyond politics and economics to culture and society. Under Federation rule, conquered species had been forced to abandon their traditional ways of life and adopt Federation customs and languages. The Commonwealth celebrated diversity and actively worked to preserve and protect the unique cultures and traditions of its member worlds. Colonel Nathan Ford administered the educational exchange programs that allowed young beings from different worlds to study and learn from each other. The Federation had deliberately kept their subject species isolated and ignorant, believing that knowledge would lead to rebellion. The Commonwealth believed that education and understanding were the foundations of lasting peace. The former Federation core worlds had been the most difficult to integrate into the new system. Many of the species that had benefited from Federation oppression had initially resisted the changes and had tried to maintain their privileged positions. However, they had gradually discovered that the Commonwealth's system of voluntary cooperation was more prosperous and stable than the Federation's system of forced tribute. Dr. Alex Rodriguez coordinated the scientific research programs that had accelerated technological development throughout Commonwealth space. The Federation had hoarded advanced technology and had used it to maintain their military dominance. The Commonwealth shared scientific knowledge freely, leading to rapid advances in medicine, agriculture, and environmental restoration. The military aspects of the transition had been managed with surprising success. The Commonwealth Defense Force was composed of volunteers from every member world, and its mission was strictly defensive. Unlike the Federation military, which had existed to conquer and subjugate, the Commonwealth military existed to protect and preserve peace. Captain Peter Williams commanded one of the deep space exploration fleets that were mapping the regions beyond former Federation space. The Commonwealth had discovered that the galaxy was much larger and more diverse than the Federation had ever acknowledged. There were hundreds of species and civilizations that had remained hidden from Federation expansion, and many of them were now making contact with the Commonwealth. The establishment of the new order had not been without challenges. Some former Federation species had attempted to establish their own empires, and there had been conflicts over territorial boundaries and resource rights. However, the Commonwealth's commitment to peaceful resolution and voluntary cooperation had prevented these disputes from escalating into major wars. Commander Nicole Brown administered the refugee settlement programs that helped displaced populations find new homes throughout Commonwealth space. The Federation had relocated millions of beings to serve as forced labor on industrial worlds. The Commonwealth had given these people the choice to return to their homeworlds or to settle permanently in their new locations with full citizenship rights. The success of the Commonwealth had attracted the attention of species and civilizations from beyond the former Federation borders. Trade delegations and diplomatic missions from distant regions of the galaxy were arriving to establish relationships with this new alliance that seemed to offer genuine cooperation rather than domination or exploitation. President Carter concluded her address to the Galactic Council by reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The Federation had declared war expecting to crush a primitive species, but instead had awakened a force that would reshape the entire galaxy. Humanity had not sought to become galactic leaders, but they had accepted the responsibility when the opportunity arose to create something better. The galaxy that emerged from the ashes of the Federation War was more peaceful, prosperous and free than any civilization in recorded history. The species that had smiled when war was declared had kept their promise to build a better future for everyone.